Hello, I'm Janina and I'm going to be your English tutor. Now, I was thinking that we could maybe start off with some poetry. Now, I remember when I was in high school, I had to learn between like 12 to 18 poems. And yeah, I mean, it's an amount of poems that can sometimes seem overwhelming. And I do recall people were, picking and choosing which ones they thought they would be in the exam so that they could, only study those. But honestly, from experience, it's better to be prepared and better to go through all the poems than, selecting a few. You don't want to get into the exam and then you're faced with something that you are not experienced with. But in saying that, there are certain things you have to memorize about each poem. You have to know what kind of structure it is. Is it a Shakespearean sonnet or is it a Petrarchan sonnet? You have to know the differences, and that is important. However, when it comes to poetry, the thing is that it is an art and it is something that can be interpreted in different ways by different people. So as long as you are in a place where you can understand each of these poems and you know how to interpret them and you know how to back up that interpretation with something that you have found in the poem when answering a question, then you should be good to go. Yes, you have to know the facts, but when it comes to the the metaphors, etc., the interpretive part of things, that isn't something that you necessarily have to memorize word for word. Honestly, if you go through each of these poems and you learn the things that, yes, you're supposed to learn, but then you just look at them and you understand them. If there's something that doesn't make sense to you, ask me, ask a teacher, look at an interpretation online, but make sure that you understand what each of these poems are and what they mean. And then when it comes to an exam, you'll be able to look at it and you'll be able to interpret it and answer the question successfully. In addition to that, you should also go and you should learn all the different factors in poetry. You have to learn the different terminology, the different figures of speech, the different types of poems, etc. And once you have that knowledge, right, once that is ingrained into your mind, then you'll be able to look at poems and you'll be able to identify these things much more easily than memorizing them specifically for every single poem. Because then you will be able to know how to identify what is happening, what kind of poem it is. Okay, but in saying that, let's start off with an example of one of the poems that you might get. So this one is called Remember by Christina Rossetti. I'm going to read the poem and then we can, try and analyze it together. Remember me when I am gone away, gone far away into the silent land. When you can no more hold me by the hand, nor I half turn to go yet turning stay. Remember me when no more day by day. You tell me of our future that you planned. Only remember me, you understand. It will be late to counsel, then or pray. Yet if you should forget me for a while, and afterwards remember, do not grieve. For if the darkness and corruption leave a vestige of thoughts that once I had, better by far you should forget and smile, than that you should remember and be sad. Okay, so now that we've gone through the poem, can you tell me what kind of poem it is? What is the form, the structure? Yes? A sonnet, that is correct. But can you tell me what kind of sonnet it is? Okay, so basically, it's not a Shakespearean sonnet, but it is a Petrarchan or Italian sonnet. And one of the things that we can identify this with is the fact that the poem is almost split into two parts, right? There are two segments. It has an octave and a sestet. So in the octave, you can sense a certain tone, a certain problem is there, You can feel that the poet is afraid of death, afraid of being forgotten, She is almost demanding the person she's speaking to remember her and, not forget her. And, there's a sense of fear, a little bit of an anxiety in this first part of the poem. However, after these 8 lines, there is almost a switch in the tone and the mood of the poem, as it's almost like the poet is accepting her fate. She's almost coming into a state of acceptance and almost allowing the person to move on. She's moving away from sort of a selfish thought to kind of wanting to allow the person to move on with their life. If you look at it there, in the last few lines, it says, better by far you should forget and smile than you should remember and be sad. So she is kind of giving this person the freedom to move on from her death. So there is definitely a switch in those two parts of the poems. Okay, and now another thing that we can use to identify this as a Petrarchan sonnet is that first octave follows a pattern of A, B, B, A, B, B, A, right? So that is the formula for a Petrarchan sonnet, whereas like a Shakespearean sonnet will maybe have certain different rhyming couplets, etc. And then the second half of the poem, the sestet, follows a rhyme scheme of C, D, E, C, D, E, right? So you have the first and fourth line rhyming, the second and second last rhyme lining, and then the third and last one rhyming as well. So that can change slightly with a Petrarchan sonnet in the last few lines. Sometimes that rhyme scheme can shift a little bit, but there will be certain different patterns, like it could also be like C, D, C, D, C, D, or C, D, D, C, E, F. That can change a little bit, but that first octave is what is most important. So let's look at the themes of this poem. What themes are coming across here? Love. Okay, yes. What kind of love do you think it is? What gives you the idea that it's about love? Okay, so you're looking at the part where it says, you tell me of our future that you planned. Okay, so yes, that is right, because in a way this is kind of interpreting the poem in a romantic love kind of way, because she's talking about our future, that we plan together kind of thing. So it kind of gives the idea that maybe she's talking to a boyfriend or a husband, and she's worried about that day when, she might die and leave them in this world, and she is afraid of being forgotten by this person. So yes, a theme of love is definitely prominent. I think another theme that we could maybe look at is the theme of death, which is definitely a very striking theme in this poem. Basically, you can see that there is a fear of dying, there is a sense of letting go of that fear, there is, and in saying that, fear is also, I think, a big part of this poem in terms of its themes, because yeah, she definitely is afraid of death. So those two kind of go hand in hand, I would say. So yeah, I mean, the interesting thing about this poem, right, and now we're going into some figures of speech, is that some euphemisms are being used. And you can see that although death appears to be a theme in this poem, she doesn't explicitly say any of the words like death or dying or died or anything along those lines. She uses a lot of language to kind of imply it, but not outright say it. So things like, when I am gone away into the silent land, it kind of gives the idea that, she is going to not be here anymore, that she is dying, but she doesn't actually say those words, which is quite a beautiful thing. It shows you the way that language can be played with and used. So yeah, so that's like one thing that is very prominent in this poem. Okay, so now I think I'm going to give you a little bit of a worksheet, a few questions about the poem, and then you'll be able to answer them and hand them in to me, maybe by the end of the week, so I have a little bit of time to go through them before our next lesson. And I'll give you some feedback on where you're at and how you can maybe improve the way you're answering these questions. But also, if you have any questions, if anything is confusing you about the poem, feel free to message me and I will get back to you as soon as I can. and try and help you out a little bit. But yeah, I think that is it for today. I hope that you understand the poem a little bit more. I hope that it's making a little bit more sense. But yeah, do the worksheets. Let me know if anything's confusing you, and I'll help you the best I can. Okay, enjoy your day, everyone.